So you just bought yourself a computer case and it looks great. Or it doesn't. Or maybe you bought a graphics card or an SSD or a motherboard, but something about it looks unclean. At that point, there's not much more idyllic than acrylic. Just as a general disclaimer, I'm no expert, so you may find that some of this video may be a little rough around the edges. I'll be using the following items: 2mm thick acrylic sheets, but size will be your preference, a plexiglass cutter, a vise of some sort, adhesive vinyl, an X-Acto knife, a ruler or some form of measuring device, 800 grit sandpaper, a file, a marker, and paint that bonds to plastic. Depending on what you're doing and what you want, a heat gun, acrylic glue, and a can of clear could also fit the bill. Now first off, what the heck is that? That is a near gear. The panel was designed to hide my front-mounted radiator, among other things. And since I knew what I was going for, the first step was to measure everything out. After getting the numbers, I marked out an acrylic sheet I bought from Lowe's and grabbed a straight edge and a plexiglass cutter. Just like the night of your high school prom, it's time to score. Your high school prom, not mine. Line up your straight edge with the acrylic and start cutting lightly at first, just to make a few initial guidelines. You may find that a vise helps for keeping things from slipping out of place. Once you've made a few cuts, you can begin applying more pressure. When you're anywhere between 25 to 50% of the way through the panel, you can snap the rest of it off. Hopefully, unlike the night of your high school prom. An easy way to do this is to use a table edge, keeping the cut side of the panel face up and applying pressure on the overhanging side. Alternatively, you can snap it with your hands like a barbarian. Next, file down the edges so you don't accidentally brutalize yourself. If you're doing some pretty aggressive filing, be sure to have an excuse readily available just in case someone walks in and wonders why it looks like you're doing cocaine. Now for the design. I took the title logo for Nier Automata, pulled the gear from the eye, inflated the image, vomited at the poor resolution scaling, and printed it out. I cut the image out as accurately as I could and used it as a stencil to cut out some adhesive vinyl with an X-Acto knife. It is at this point in time that I learned that trying to cut a perfect circle imposes suicidal contemplations. Luckily or unluckily, you will have a sharp blade nearby should you decide to take that route. After you've made your cuts, whatever cuts those may be, separate your adhesive vinyl from the backing and carefully apply it to the acrylic. For larger designs, you may want to take the vinyl off a little at a time as opposed to working the entire thing at once. If you want to take a look at some other things you can do with vinyl, you can check out the video up here. Back to this thing. You can either apply the vinyl the way I show here, or you can use transfer paper. For the latter, after you cut your vinyl design out, take your transfer paper and remove the backing from that. Lay the adhesive side of the transfer paper on your design, being sure to get rid of any bubbles with a card or a spudger, and then lift the paper with your design adhered to it. Now you can place the transfer paper on your acrylic panel, pat it down flat, again with a card or a spudger, and peel the transfer paper off. Between the first method and the second, I suggest using the transfer paper for more complicated designs. Or at the very least, not asking me to do it, because I suck at both. An optional step is sanding. I used 800 grit for this, but anything between 240 and 1000 should be okay. Sanding helps the paint bite into something as you apply it, and even if you're not painting, sanding the surface gives kind of a frosted look, and it helps diffuse any kind of lighting you put behind it. Just be sure not to uplift any of the vinyl as you go. After sanding, I brushed away excess particles with a microfiber cloth and took it out back for a little bit of spray and pray. The paint choice is your own, but you should use something that adheres to plastic. I threw the piece in a cardboard box in an effort to keep things like leaves from falling on it. However, make sure you don't have any assholes. I mean cats. Apparently they're not afraid of sleeping on wet paint. And so I proceeded to paint the side without the vinyl in white. I kept the can about 10 inches or about 25 centimeters away and applied several coats in an even back and forth motion, being sure to completely overlap the edges. After an hour or so, you can apply another coat if you want, but I'm impatient and I wanted results now. So I flipped the piece over and did it from behind. I let this dry for a couple hours and then used an X-Acto knife to carefully peel off the vinyl I painted over to reveal the more or less final product. As an optional last step, you can apply a coat of clear to your piece, which will help keep it preserved and protected against damage. I opted to skip this step since I'd be leaving it in my case, and I don't imagine I'd have much in the way of rain or explosions going on in there. I hope. And for those of you wondering how I made it RGB, I didn't. I have an NZXT Hue Plus strip hanging behind the panel, and it's kind of cheating, but it looks cool, so... And that is more or less it. You can apply these steps to things like motherboard shields, interior or exterior case panels, SSD plates, SLI bridge covers, GPU backplates, and more. Depending on the complexity of your project, you may want to pick up a heat gun or some acrylic glue. Using the same techniques we went over a minute ago, I created this power supply shroud. But before any of the sanding or painting, I measured out the relevant dimensions, whipped out the heat gun, and fired it up. I set the gun to high and moved it back and forth over the appropriate spot, probably around 4 to 6 inches or 10 to 15 centimeters away, and then bent it over a table and humped it into submission. You don't want to get too close or heat it too quickly, otherwise you'll see bubbles begin to form in the acrylic. If you see the acrylic begin to bend on its own a little bit, you can start to apply pressure and see if it submits to your overbearing dominance. But if it doesn't, just whip out your big gun again and keep on keeping on. Once you have the angle right, that is the right angle, hold it in place for a few seconds to let it cool for a bit. Once it can maintain its own shape, leave it for a little while longer until it's more or less room temperature. From there, you can sand it and paint it as you see fit. Now, while bends would look the cleanest, sometimes you need either tight angles or layered panels for added depth. This is where the glue comes in. For example, I wanted this SLR bridge to be lit as f***, so I made it more like an enclosure by gluing multiple panels together. Flat looked a little too plain for my taste, so I cut a couple more pieces of acrylic out, filed down an edge for a slight angle, then glued them to the body of the cover. Do note that you'll want to do the gluing before you paint, as the glue acts as a kind of paint remover, and then you'll be a sad boy. Like me. After that, I soldered up an LED to some wires, hooked it up via Molex power, and stuck it inside the poorly constructed bridge plate. Let me know if you want a video on that. You may find it enlightening. And finally, I fixed it to the actual bridge with some 3M double-sided tape. Clearly, your options here are near limitless, so go take a look at your case or your components or whatever, and go plexiglass that boxy ass. If you do anything at all and you're super proud, feel free to tweet me or send me an email with your handiwork. My social media, as well as links to buy all the tools and materials used, are in the description below. I mentioned earlier that I'm no pro at this. I had to do a bit of research before tackling this project, and so, some important channels that I've referenced throughout this endeavor are JP Modified, Declassified Systems, Designs by IFR or I'm Face Roll, and Singularity Computers. I'll have them all linked down below if you want to see them do the things I did and more, except better. By a lot. And so that's all I have to say about that. Like, dislike, comment, subscribe, share. Thanks for watching. My name is Steven and I am ALittleDIMM. And before I say bye-bye, do check out my Twitter, because occasionally I will look for a product of some sort that follows a general guideline. And I'll be like, oh boy, I could really use a case like that. Or a case similar to this. Or a case in, I don't know, white, for example. And you may be thinking, oh boy, I really want to see this review on this white case. I wish that idiot would do it. You might be thinking at some point in time, boy, I really want this white case, but I don't see any good reviews on it. Or any subpar reviews on it. Or any mediocre reviews on it. I wish this guy would do that. And on any particular given day, I may or may not say, I need a white case. Does anybody have a suggestion that they would want me to review? That is your chance to say, take a look at this white case, because I want to see it. And then at that point, I may or may not say, okay or no, depending on who else says what, and whether it fits the general idea that I'm going for, depending on what that idea is. Check out my other social media too if you want. I mean, that'd be cool. You don't get anything special out of it, but you don't really lose anything either, except for maybe time if you hate hearing me or seeing me. In which case, why are you here? I don't know. That's all I got to say about that. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye. So you just bought yourself a computer. Okay, damn it, that was fast. I feel like every video starts off with me messing up and saying that was fast. Just like the night of your high school prom, it's time to score. I don't know what that was, really. Trying to cut a perfect circle imposes suicidal contemplations. I don't know what I said first. Complantations, I think is what I tried to say, and it's wrong. Lay the adhesive side of the vinyl on the tray. Damn it! So I flipped the piece over and did it from behind. I opted to skip this step. Why did I say sense? You can apply these steps to things like motherboards, shields. Oops. My social media, as well as links to buy all the tools and materials used below, are in the description. I said used below. In the description. Used in the description below. Meh. And so some important channels that I've referenced throughout the entire endeavor. I don't know if you guys know this or not, but sometimes I have fun pronouncing things intentionally wrong. Like jalapeno, I say jalapeno for no reason, really. And then I do it so frequently. One time I straight up forgot how to say jalapeno. And I was ordering something at a restaurant. And I stumbled. I was like, it's not jalapeno, don't say jalapeno, and I said jalapeno. I'm a goddamn idiot. I want to see this white case.